I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, so we'll start with communications. I just have one thing here I'd like to share with everyone. It's a long letter, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it was a letter that was sent to the governor, Kathy Hochul, from the Westchester Municipal Officials Association. It was in reference to the for housing compact, which is part of the state budget. And there's several of us supervisors, mayors that signed this letter, including myself, just to indicate that we're not in favor of the mandates that are being imposed through this, through her housing compact initiative. So I'll just read a brief summary here. It's an intro of in the letter. The WMOA, which is the Westchester Municipal Officials Association Subcommittee on Housing, believes that new housing in this region is critically important for the health of our communities. Suburban attitudes about housing development are not the same as they once were. In fact, many Westchester communities are already exceeding their housing targets, and many others are working diligently to do so. I'm just going to adjust. My audio is on here. Hold on. Get rid of that, I think. Yeah, turn that off. Okay. We support your desire to make progress on this issue. Unfortunately, we cannot support the housing compact in its current form. Without significant changes, it simply will not work. The suburbs are not monolithic, nor are we merely satellites for New York City. Each of our municipalities has different housing needs and different obstacles to overcome, and no plan will be successful without taking into account the relevant local context. We have shared this context with our state representatives, select members of your team, and the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal. We now share highlights of our concerns directly with you in the hope that you will consider these changes and ensure that the path ahead will be productive. The letter covers multiple components of that legislation. I'm not going to read through all of it, but it will be included in the minutes for anyone that's interested. I'll give it to our town clerk. So that's the only thing I have for communications.
And so I like that it was in its current form was said, because I understand there are some parts of it which are okay.
Yeah,
It's not like the whole.
It's not the whole thing, correct?
Yeah,
yeah.
Just the sort of home rule stuff and things like that. So
right. And
that's
development in watershed around like Golden Bridge train station, it wouldn't fit.
yeah, I'll have to go back and fix
right.
it.
And for anyone interested, the county executive today in his Facebook Live presentation that he does every week, he talked about it. So it's I highly recommend listening to it. Okay.
Can I take a look at that while you're telling me?
The letter?
The letter, yeah.
Okay. So next is consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes and the monthly reports from the building department, police department. I motion that you approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, new business. We'll start with an update on the comprehensive plan project. Katie McGinn.
Hi, I'm here on Zoom.
Okay, so Katie, I will share the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, just hold on one second. Let's see, it's here somewhere. What's this?
Would it be helpful for you all if I turn my camera on? Will you be able to see my face in addition to the presentation?
It's up to you. Yeah, I'm gonna have it up on the screen here as well. So
I vote yes.
yeah, that's yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, on the screen here at the townhouse, I'm only displaying the presentation. So
Oh, okay. So can you in the townhouse see my face?
only if I if I.
Oh, okay, then don't worry about it. I think it'll be easier for everybody. I'll just focus on reading my notes and giving you guys the best presentation possible.
Okay. Well, hold on one second. Let me just make sure it gets displayed here.
This is not in the packet though, right?
What's that?
This.
Presentation.
It's not.
packet.
No.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Where's it? Shit.
Good session.
Right there, new share.
What does it say? Paused. Oh, resume share. Okay, there we go. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do I get rid of this?
Maybe you don't need to.
Is it shared on, it is, okay, because this is, says that my screen sharing is paused. It looks good, okay.
If maybe, we'll get that up if Katie could just kind of segue in, because we had a presentation by the consultant very recently. If you could just maybe segue how that presentation ties into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I'll start, yes, Valerie Manastra, who's our project manager with Nelson Pope Voorhees, which is the planning consultant to the comprehensive plan. She gave a presentation last month that was sort of part one of the quarterly update, but it was very clear from watching that presentation that there were definitely some open questions that hadn't been answered, and that there was some background that perhaps the town board would find helpful to hear again. So you can consider this part two of your quarterly update. Okay, with that, should I get started?
Sure.
Okay, so hi, everybody. My name is Katie. I'm the chair of the Comprehensive / Master Plan Steering Committee. We can call ourselves the steering committee or the committee. So other members of the committee include Charlene and Delicato, Larry Mango, Mark Robbins, and John Wolf. And I believe John Wolf is in the room tonight with you. Kirsten Conran is our administrator to the committee, and I already mentioned the planning consultant. So our previous presentations to the town board were July 26th and October 25th, 2021, January 24th, March 29th, June 13th, on October 11th, 2022. And then Valerie's presentation last month in 2023. So if anyone is interested in catching up on that content, the updates are detailed in the town board meeting minutes from those dates and on our page on the Lewisboro website. That page on the Lewisboro town website is a great resource. It has tons of information, a working project timeline, educational resources, and more. Okay, next slide, please. Or the slide that says thank you on the top.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there you go.
I think the pause is actually on Zoom itself.
Yeah, it's still telling me. Okay, so let me.
Resume share. It's just a
Yeah, resume sharing would do it.
click that.
That I did.
Oh,
You know what? Let
So
me stop
stop
sharing
sharing
and
and
just do
start
it again.
again.
See if that works.
Yep, I can see the page that says thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here because there is a lot of gratitude that needs to be properly passed around. So in February, we wrapped up the first round of gathering public input for Lewisboro's comprehensive plan update. And I really want to make sure we take the time to say thank you for everyone that made that happen. There was a lot of great work and time and effort that went into making those meetings in person and online happen. And it's important to remember we are just getting started here. We still have 2 more rounds to go. So to the members of the Lewisboro community who participated in the first round, whether by attending the in-person workshop at the high school, the virtual meetings, or taking the online survey, thank you so much. Your input and your participation is really what this process is all about. And to the outreach teams, including the chairs and the co-chairs, all of you volunteering your time to help spread the word about the public meetings. Thank you so much. Making the public engagement and outreach for this process as inclusive and wide-reaching as possible is really no small task. We cannot do it without all of these volunteers. To my fellow steering committee members, you've been volunteering your time for 2 full years now. Thank you for all of that time and effort researching, learning, and working hard to make sure this process is efficient, inclusive, and as wide-reaching as possible. To the chairs of the Planning Board, the Zoning Board, and ACARC, thank you for your participation in so many of our meetings and throughout this process. We really appreciate your insight and your feedback. And thank you to Valerie and her team at NPV. They are working hard to translate all of the input from the Lewisboro community into actionable goals and opportunities for the future of Lewisboro. Again, no small task. To our town board liaisons, thank you for your participation. I see Dan is there and Andrea as well. Thank you for your participation in our monthly meetings. Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, Andrea's not here yet.
Andrea is not here yet, but thank you nevertheless, Andrea and Dan, for your participation in our monthly meetings and for your insight and your feedback along the way. So I just want to take a moment here to make a note to the full town board while I have you. The town board is the body that will ultimately adopt and implement the new comprehensive plan. We will be asking you all to get more involved going forward. You know, up till now, we've really been putting the information associated with the public outreach and the public input out there and sharing it, but we haven't been engaging you, the full town board, directly, with the exception of our quarterly updates. We've been focusing our active stakeholder engagement elsewhere and trusting that if the board had questions, concerns, or recommendations for the process, that the board would reach out to us. So going forward, we will make a concerted effort to engage you, the full town board, more directly and make sure that you are committed to an understanding of the process and that any questions and concerns are answered and addressed where possible. Okay, next slide, please. So with that, I'd like to take a few more minutes to share a refresher on the project phases, the general timeline, and how community members can get involved. Then I will review the participation figures from the first round of meetings and provide some helpful points of comparison to put these figures in context. Next, I will provide an overview of the community outreach and advertising methods that we've used during the current community engagement phase of the project. And finally, I will walk through the steering committee's updated recommendation for the format of the next round of public meetings. So I know that Dan and Andrea have already heard most of this at our most recent steering committee meeting, and I appreciate their continued engagement. All of the board members received the information I will be presenting today via email after our February 23rd meeting. So at the end of mid to end of February. So one thing I've been saying a lot, and I'll say it again tonight, this is a very important moment in the comprehensive plan update process for us to pause, take a step back, and evaluate. So I want to be very clear about this. The reason we evaluate is to figure out where we can adjust or improve our process. We're seeking to answer a few questions. One, are we doing everything we can to reach the Lewisboro community, let them know about events, and communicate the importance of their engagement in this process? That's question number one. Are we doing everything we can to reach the community? And question number two, are we doing so within the project budget? We can control the answers to these questions, but we can't control the outcome, which is the number of people who actually participate in the meetings or the surveys. So I hope that the board members will jump in with any questions, comments, or concerns throughout tonight's presentation. I will be stopping throughout after the end of each section And I want to make sure there's plenty of space so that the board members can ask questions, and I can make sure that you all are committed to an understanding of the process.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, just, thank you for all you that you're doing on this. My initial, I guess, a threshold question, you're talking about members of the Lewisboro community. And I just want to understand, what that means here, as it pertains to what's going on. I mean, specifically, Lewisboro community, we're talking about residents, people who live here. Does that also include, and I'm hoping it does, any organizations that are looking to participate as well? Things like, for example, the GBHO, and more recently, the Vista Hamlet Stewardship Council, are entities like that, as well as members of our business community. What is their role as, are they part of the Lewisboro community in this project, and how do you see that?
Great question. Thank you, Rich. So I will definitely be answering in the presentation how we've brought those organizations into the process. But I will say we are defining the Lewisboro community as residents and stakeholders. And the phrase we like to use consistently is anyone who lives in or works in Lewisboro. So that encompasses stakeholders, residents, business owners, organizations. One note on organizations, we have been very careful to set up this process so that feedback goes directly from the stakeholders themselves to the planning consultant without any intermediaries in between. So an organization like a Hamlet organization serves a function in this process by making sure their members know about the public meetings, making sure their members know where the meetings are happening, that they can go to our website, who they can get in touch with questions. But those organizations are not acting as intermediaries to filter feedback from their members to the consultant. It's a direct relationship between the stakeholders themselves and the consultant. And that's part of our mission, which I'll outline shortly, which is to keep things fair and equal access.
Well, I'm glad to hear that as far as who the members of the Lewisboro community are. One of the things that I'm concerned about as far as we move through the process is to make sure that the final document, which is the last one, 1985, is a forward-looking document that serves the community for the next generation. I don't want it to be a document which at the end of the day essentially just serves to ratify that people are essentially comfortable with the status quo. I think it should be a forward-looking document that can be worked for planning purposes and just really something that could serve the community's purposes for the next generation. And if it's just something that ends up ratifying the status quo without any meaningful items, meaningful concepts, meaningful proposals and exchange that give us an opportunity to make sure we have the best possible future, then I think that would really be a wasted opportunity.
Thank you so much for saying that, Rich. We wholeheartedly agree. We are very much aligned in that you'll hear shortly our mission, the methods we're using. We can control the process, that outreach and engagement is as wide reaching and inclusive as possible. And then we're partnering with the consulting firm to make sure that they understand that this is a really important document and needs to take all stakeholder voices and their vision for the future of Lewisboro and incorporate it into the policy recommendations and the zoning updates and all that good stuff, which we will be getting into tonight. Yes, your feedback is duly noted. Thank you. Any other comments or questions before I move to the project refresher section?
Nope.
Go ahead, Kate.
So next page, please. Actually, and the page after that, please. So here's our mission statement, as I alluded to earlier. We take this very seriously, and working in alignment with our mission statement is really important to the steering committee. So our mission is to engage the Lewisboro community in order to inform the future of our town and capture this vision in an updated comprehensive plan. And our mission is also to ensure fair and equal opportunities for all members of the community to provide input throughout this multi-year process. Okay, next page, please. So I thought it would be important to take a step back and look at the committee and the board roles. So first of all, the steering committee, we're charged with managing this multi-year process, including the community outreach and engagement. It's our job to ensure that public input is as inclusive and wide-reaching as possible. And it's our job to make recommendations to the town board. The consultant team, that's NPV, they translate the public input that they receive through the public forums. They translate that into actionable goals, objectives, and recommendations. And they use that information to draft the updated comprehensive plan and zoning amendments, along with the existing conditions report, also known as the inventory and analysis report. And then the town board, we hope you will be providing input throughout the process. For example, the board reviewed the inventory and analysis report, and we will be—
Extensive.
Sorry?
It was extensive.
Yes, the extensive inventory and analysis report, as it should be. It captures the picture of where Lewisboro is now. So thank you for reviewing that. And you had that from December until February. We will be seeking the board's input throughout the process on designing the remaining rounds of public meetings. Specifically, we want your input on. And ultimately, the board is the body that votes to approve the updated comprehensive plan or not. So I thought that would be helpful to just take a step back and look at those three very different roles in the process. So with that, the next slide goes over the project timeline. So we completed the introductory phase. That included a community launch survey, the extensive consultant search and hire process. Then the consulting team did their preliminary review, and we launched a community participation survey, which I will be walking through in great detail later, because that's really important for how we've built our mailing list and our volunteer base. Now we are in the community engagement phase. This is where our community outreach teams with our volunteers have been formed. We had meeting series number 1 in January and February. And out of that meeting series, the consulting team is currently working on drafting a vision statement for the town of Lewisboro, and draft goals and draft objectives. And then meeting series number 2, which we will be talking about in detail, and I'll be asking for your input tonight. That will be workshops focused on going over those draft goals and objectives through the lens of each hamlet and on a town-wide basis. The last phase of the project, which will be in late 2023 and possibly probably early 2024, the consultant will draft the actual draft comprehensive plan. The community will have time to read and provide input on that draft. There'll be another series of public meetings, including public hearings on the proposed plan and proposed zoning amendments. And then the final step is the town board votes to adopt or not the updated plan as proposed. Any plan that the consultant works on will be a recommendation to the town board. And again, you're the body that will ultimately decide to adopt that. So on the community and next slide, on the community engagement phase, the question of how can you, the board, or how can the community get involved? First, visit our website, our webpage. It's listed here, lewisborogov.com/CMPSC. There's also a link to it on the homepage. So if you just go to lewisborogov.com, there's a Lewisboro spotlight piece that'll take you right to us. So on our webpage, you'll find the link to follow us on Facebook and the link to send us an email to join our mailing list. It's that steering@planlewisboro.com email address that's up on the screen there. You can also send us an email to join a community outreach team. It's not too late to join one of those. I'll be talking about what those do later. And also, we still have another round of meetings during the community engagement phase and another round of meetings after that. So participating in the public meetings and the surveys is the ultimate goal, to get as many people to participate as possible. And the information about those meetings lives on our website. As a reminder, we have a pretty detailed community outreach and engagement plan, which guides our work on this project, outlines the role of the various bodies, the outreach teams. That's been posted to our page on the town website since August 2022. It has an Appendix A in it, which is a list of community stakeholders. And we've known from the beginning that this list was incomplete. There's a big note on the report that says, this list is incomplete. Please continue to review and let us know if you don't see your organization, your association, or your business listed. So as I mentioned before, the comprehensive plan process is designed to solicit input directly from individuals, but we really are relying on organizations and businesses, in addition to our volunteers, to help us spread the word about the process and about upcoming events. Okay, so any questions or comments? You can turn to the next slide, Tony, on anything I just talked about before we move to the next section, which is participation in comparative statistics from the first round of meetings.
Katie, will you vary the days that the various meetings will occur? Like not all of them on a Saturday morning?
Yes, we heard your feedback last month, and we went back to the drawing board and workshopped a bit, and that I will spend a good deal of time at the end of the presentation going over where we landed, what that looks like, and then what days are covered.
Thank you.
If I might maybe go back to Rich's point, or at least around there, with respect to the groups. And I think it's great that you're trying to maximize the direct input from individuals. But I also feel like there is maybe some benefit to encouraging inputs in the form of inputs from the groups themselves, in addition to those individuals, because the individuals are maybe not going to necessarily capture the essence of what like the group might think of these things. And I understand that there could be a concern that, you have a group, and then maybe there is typically a lot of groups, there's like two people who are like really active and maybe sort of dominate. So you got to be careful that it isn't just a channel for somebody's personal something or other. But I just feel like whether it be the garden club or somebody where if they came together as a group and submitted some input, it could crystallize more firmly into sort of what they might be looking for, and that all of these inputs, they're like different windows into what the town could be. So as an individual, I'm looking in this window and that's the way I see it. But when you're putting your group hat on, maybe it looks a little bit different. And I just think there's room for all different slices and dices so that you can kind of triangulate a little bit more. So maybe that's something we can look at.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm making a note of that. I will just say that definitely goes back to my my series of two questions. Are we doing everything we can to engage the Lewisboro community and get everyone involved and make sure their input is received? And are we doing so within our budget? So let's keep that in mind as we're talking about everything going forward.
Good.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so round one meetings, participation and comparative statistics. So I think this will be really helpful in putting things in context. So you'll see a chart here that was provided to us by the consulting team at NPV. And you'll see Lewisboro, that's our participation to date. So keep in mind, that's with one round of meetings completed, and we still have 2 to go. So we're currently at 2.8%. And Valerie and the team at NPV are noting that our participation to date is already in line, as you can see, with the total project participation for most of the towns listed. The exceptions listed here are Ossining and Chestnut Ridge, and there is a big difference there. So those 2 municipalities were dealing with very controversial issues early on in their plan update process. For example, specific development concerns around a few very well-known properties. So that drew a lot of public participation, as things often do when they're controversial or a hot topic. So on that note, the steering committee also obtained figures from the town clerk's office for some context on our local participation in public meetings. Our average attendance for 2022 at Lewisboro Town Board meetings was over Zoom 18 and live in person 8. Now, speaking of controversial, during 2020, there was record attendance when board meetings were held only via Zoom. And that was March through December of the year. So Zoom attendance then ranged from 22 in May to 230 in July. The second highest attendance after that 230 in July was 138 in December. So that puts things into context in terms of what can we anticipate for the total participation in the total plan, and where are we now with regards to what's kind of normal for Lewisboro. So the next slide has the breakdown of attendance. We had approximately 353 participants total for round one. The virtual meetings had 80 people signed up for the Monday, 35 of those attended. We had 60 people signed up for the Thursday, 35 attended. The in-person workshop happened on a Saturday and 122 people attended there. And then we had the virtual survey where 161 people attended. For the reason why I use the approximate is for the virtual meeting, there was some overlap in terms of the attendees on Monday and Thursday evenings. I also want to point out the in-person workshop featured free childcare that was provided in partnership with County Children's Center, and it also provided free Spanish and Chinese translators, and that was advertised leading up to the meeting. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. So any questions on those comparative statistics or the attendance breakdown? Does that answer some of the questions from last month's meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It does.
Good. Well, how's everybody feeling about that now?
It's a good accomplishment so far. It's great. Considering we still, got a lot of sessions to go and a lot more opportunity to engage. I think we're getting charged up here.
Okay, great. Okay, next section, please. So now I'm gonna go through an overview of the community outreach and advertising methods that we used during the community engagement phase of the process. So this excludes phase 1 of the project. This is just focusing on the current phase we are in now. So I mentioned earlier, we had a participation survey that was live from September to October 2022. And I'm going to walk through these baseline advertising methods. You'll see these repeated in the future, but our baseline is making sure that we advertise on the town website, and there is the Google Translate button on the bottom right corner of the website that translates into a variety of languages. We also use the Town Weekly community email announcement, the Parks and Rec senior newsletter, the standalone town email blast that comes from the clerk's office, the standalone Parks and Rec email blast that comes out from that department. Also articles and announcements in the Record Review, Lewisboro, Katona Times, and the town social media. So that includes town Instagram, recently the town Instagram, and the supervisor's Facebook page. So for the participation survey, additional methods over and above the baseline we used were a townwide postcard mailer, and that was in 2 languages, English and Spanish, that went out to all addresses coordinated through the tax assessor's office. Flyers were posted in each hamlet in English and in Spanish, physical paper flyers. We also advertised at the library fair, at the Parks and Rec Trunk or Treat event, and at the Parks and Rec New Neighbor event. So for the participation survey, we had a total of about 500 respondents. And the main question on that survey was, would you like to volunteer to help with public outreach, or would you like to join our mailing list? Next slide, please. So from the volunteers, we had over 100 people volunteer to help with community outreach. We had folks reach out to us directly, proactively, to the Steering at Plan Lewisboro address to ask to be leaders or chairs of outreach teams. And that's how these outreach teams were formed, the list you see on the screen. When in the process of forming the teams, we used direct emails and a follow-up survey from SurveyMonkey to everyone who volunteered to help, and allowed them to self-select which community outreach team they wanted to be a part of. And then after that, the outreach team chairs and co-chairs reached out via email to their volunteers to get the ball rolling. So in addition to the Hamlet teams, we have the Lakes team, the Spanish language team, and the Chinese language team. Okay, next slide, please.
And I think NPVs was really impressed with the organization and the participation in the outreach teams and all that. I could sense that. It was amazing what was going on there. So great stuff.
Thanks, Dan. So when it came to advertising the first round of meetings, we had 2 phases. Phase 1 was a save the date phase. That was in December 2022. We used all the same baseline advertising methods I walked through on the previous slide. And then the additional methods we used were the constant contact email list. I'll come back to that in a second. And virtual flyers via the community outreach teams. Those spanned email, social media. Those were distributed in English, Spanish, and Chinese. So going back to constant contact, that list is currently 275 addresses. So the math on how we got there, we had 500 respondents from the participation survey. We had a stakeholder list of about 100 that was publicly available email addresses gathered by the steering committee. The outreach and engagement plan was posted on our website in August 2022 with a request to email if your organization or business was missing. We captured publicly available email addresses for Lewisboro volunteer organizations, nonprofits, and religious organizations, Lewisboro homeowner, neighborhood, or lake associations, Lewisboro businesses, Katona Lewisboro school district parent-teacher organizations, the town departments, town committees and councils, police, fire, and LVAC. And recently, we've been able to get some additional email addresses, partially from the volunteer fair at the library recently, partially from business owners who have reached out and been super helpful in providing us with additional business owner information. So that's how we get to our current list of 675 addresses. Okay, next slide, please. So that was just phase one. Phase two, what happened during January and February of this year, and the advertising for the meetings that took place in January and February. So in addition to the baseline methods, and the constant contact mailing list I just discussed, we also added the town cable channel, virtual flyers via the community outreach teams, paper flyers posted in each hamlet, and those ended up being quite extensive. In the past, we'd told teams that it had to be the post office and the grocery store at a minimum, and the outreach teams were fantastic and really went above and beyond and posted flyers at many local businesses, in addition to post offices and town buildings. We also sent out, separate from the constant contact, dedicated emails to all the parent-teacher organizations and to business owners to make sure that the word was getting out there as well. Okay, so future advertising. We have a few requests of the town board, and I know I've already emailed you about these, but just to go over them again. The notify Lewisboro text and phone call system, we think would be a big help. And Tony has volunteered to coordinate that with us going forward, so that's great. I also have worked with Tony and the webmaster to get authorization to use more of her time to reorganize our webpage. The webmaster has been so generous with her time to date, and we wanted to make sure that we got permission before we layered on any additional layers of work without checking ahead first. So thank you to Tony for making that happen. We still need a connection to the school district. So the question is, who can we speak to or meet with to discuss reaching parents and families to let them know about the next round of meetings? Who can we speak with about getting the high schoolers more involved with outreach and participation in connection with their volunteering or their senior internships? So I know Tony noted that he and Mary could work with the steering committee on that going forward.
I know several people whom we could contact about that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I look forward to talking with you about that, Mary.
My pleasure. And also the next point, Parks and Rec, I've got your back on that one.
Okay, great. So they've already been so helpful, in including us, letting us do dedicated email blasts to their mailing list, advertising. They did get in the first round of the first stage of the project, they did get an announcement out about the project in one of their brochures. So yeah, it's just about how can we continue to take steps to make sure we're advertising there. And again, we don't want to layer on any additional layers of work here without authorization first, but I think that, as you've mentioned before, that could be helpful. The last item, Tony took this one on, coordinating a conversation with the firehouses. We did reach out to one of them today to ask about potentially hosting a meeting, making sure Tony was looped in on that. One thing that came up recently, we had a little outreach team brainstorming session. If the town board could announce information about the project at all your meetings and at any town events where you're making welcome remarks, that would be fantastic as well. If the town board would like to explore any additional outreach items that go take us outside the project budget, you can let me know. The options include additional postcard mailings, lawn signs, things like that. But those are separate and would be outside the budget.
I would suggest right now, like lawn signs, a batch of lawn signs, it's a couple $100. We don't need like hundreds of them, but like a few at major corners. And like it seems to me we should just go ahead and do that. Is the rest of the board interested in that? No? Yes?
I would be okay with it. If you We also have the message board at 121, the Lions message board, which has been used for this.
Mhm.
Yep, we've got that. That's well covered.
What about your next time your tax bill or school bill goes out, putting it in the bill? Everyone looks at the tax,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that's an opportunity. The mail is going
Did
out.
that,
Yeah,
did that
that's-
go out yet, or? is it,
I don't
No,
think so.
uh-huh,
but,
okay.
And it means you
But
hit
that's-
every homeowner, every business owner who's paying tax.
Yeah, we need
Well,
to,
Yeah.
typically, we don't, I know from past experience that they don't like to add anything else to the tax bill, so.
Yeah.
But good idea, yeah.
We want to keep the comprehensive plan a pleasant experience.
That's it.
Yes, 4,000.
All right, so.
Okay, so am I hearing no on the school bill situation?
I think it
On the tax bill, I would say no. At this
might
point.
be,
I mean, I could ask again, bring it up with the tax. receiver.
spend money on the town, on a couple of signs placed strategically, but not for too long. Because vision fatigue kicks in and people stop seeing it after a while.
We asked about the assessor order on, for the tree ordinance.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, okay, so let's move on, because we're,
Okay, I will, I'll make a note to follow up about lawn signs.
okay.
Need it.
What would be the best way? Would you like us to work with the outreach teams to bring a proposal for how many we would like and kind of how much that might cost and take it from there?
Yeah, let's start with that, Katie.
Start with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Making a note. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, actually, I'd like to pause here for a second and just make sure that everybody, I know I've been moving through a lot of information. So before I move into the next section, which is our recommendation for the next round of meetings, I just want to have the space that each of you can share your thoughts, questions, concerns. If you don't mind, I'll go down the line. And I know you just joined, Andrea. Thank you for coming. We thanked you a bunch throughout. So don't want you to know you have been mentioned and your contributions are appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with Rich, if you don't mind.
Do you have any questions or comments of what's been presented so far?
On the side from. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm good.
He's
now.
good.
You're good. Okay, before we move.
I front loaded my questions.
Just, I know that many of us do mention the comprehensive plan and our desire for input from everybody anytime we're in front of anyone. Thank you for that gentle reminder.
Great. Any other comments or questions, Mary?
Not at this time, but
Okay.
I can reach out to you, or we could have a cup of coffee.
Okay, thank you. Rich, I already asked Rich, already asked Mary, Tony.
No, Katie, I don't have anything extra. I just want to say it's been great working with you. I know we've been communicating on a regular basis. So thank you for all your efforts here.
Yeah, thank you for helping keep things moving. I'll give you another minute, Andrea. Dan, do you have any comments or questions?
No, just looking forward to the next activities. It's gonna be fun.
Okay, great. So what we've covered so far was all part of our February 23rd steering committee, Andrea. So you're definitely in the loop on everything. I'm gonna go over the next meeting series format recommendations next. We haven't covered that yet. So other than that topic, any general thoughts or questions or observations you'd like to share?
I do have a question that's related to what's coming up, only that I know that you had a meeting with the outreach teams on Tuesday.
Mhm.
So I wasn't able to be present, but I was wondering if, as with the regular meetings, that that was recorded as well. So I could go back and see how that went.
Great question. Thank you. And thank you for reminding me. about that. So we had an outreach team brainstorm session on March 7th. And that invitation was sent out to all 100+ volunteers who are members of the outreach teams. And just as a refresher, I'm not sure I mentioned this explicitly. So the function of those outreach teams is solely to help get the word out, to help spread the word via email, by posting flyers. So this brainstorming session was specifically to ask the group if there were any outreach methods that we were missing, and to kind of give them a tour of our Facebook page and the flyers that we've created for an informational campaign we're doing right now, which I will touch on at the end of the presentation. So it was great. We had about 20 people total. We did not record the meeting because we wanted people to feel free to, kind of spitball and come up with harebrained ideas and things like that. But what we do have is a public document on Google Drive that has all of the ideas that were brought forth, and a note about the resources or the connections that are needed, and the space for people to volunteer to take on one of the tasks. So that's a really good summary of the meeting. So if you don't have it already, Andrea, I will make sure you have it, and I will share it with the board.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm purposely just creating a lot of space here because I want you all to have the freedom to think up questions as we're going here. And I know you've had this information since February, but I know you're also busy. So this is the opportunity to digest it. So anything else before I move on?
I attended the Saturday morning meeting at the high school and thought it was really wonderful.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, we did. We received really good feedback about it. We also received some good constructive feedback that we passed along to the consulting team. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with their ability to take the feedback and say, great, thank you. We're committed to improving and making things better going forward. So that's a really nice feature of the team we're working with.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Should I go ahead and move on to the next slide?
Okay, so let's talk about the round 2 of meetings. Just staying on this slide for a second, one general note, I just want to highlight that in order to avoid going over budget, which I hope is clear by now is important to the steering committee, the steering committee and the outreach team volunteers will need to continue handling a couple things going forward. We will be handling booking and confirming meeting spaces and coordinating with the space, read the layout of tables, etc. MPV will continue to handle the day of setup and breakdown, and they'll bring in and create the day of materials. The steering committee and the outreach teams will also be handling all community outreach. This means flyers, advertising, signing new people up to the constant contact email list. The only role MPV will have there is it's their constant contact account. So they will send out the constant contact email blasts that we create for them. So we're really trying to minimize unnecessary hours by the consulting team and pick up these activities where we can. Okay, so next slide. Just to give you some insight into the considerations that went into designing the next round of meetings. So we made one recommendation last month. We've now updated it, and with both of those recommendations, we're really pleased to be able to create a round of meetings that will allow the project to stay on budget, as I mentioned. Tonight's recommendation is based on the attendance patterns from the first round of workshops that we went over tonight. It's also based on a collaborative discussion that I mentioned we had during our February 23rd steering committee meeting. That was with the steering committee, the board liaisons, Dan and Andrea, the chairs of the planning board and ZBA, and typically ACARC is involved in those meetings as well, but the chair out of the country for that meeting. So thank you again to Dan and Andrea for their engagement and their collaboration here. I feel like we're onto something that really was collaborative and born out of the full group. So an overview, we've got a series of 6 in-person Hamlet workshops on Saturdays, but in the morning and the afternoons, such that parents with kids in sports should be able to make one of the sessions. Childcare will be available at those. I'll come back to that in a second. One townwide in-person workshop on a Sunday evening, and translators will be available there. I'll come back to that in a second as well. The virtual survey will be open for the full period. And all of these meetings will cover the same content. So a note here on childcare, I need to take a minute to thank the town board for making supplemental funding available for childcare at the public meetings and workshops. So during the last round, the board set a max budget for childcare for all of the in-person meetings. And so far we are on track to stay within that budget. Regarding translators for Spanish and Chinese speaking residents of our community, the funding for translators and the translation of materials is included in the total comprehensive plan project budget. That was something we mentioned in the RFP up front. A big thank you goes out to the members of our language outreach teams, because they've actually been volunteering their time to translate all of the outreach materials for the project so that we don't need to spend money on professional translators there. Another note, we aim to hold all public workshops or meeting in an ADA compliant venue. And we're working hard to make sure that continues to be the case. Okay, so let's dive into the details and then we can have a discussion. So here's what we've got. We're looking at May and June. These meetings will span May and June. Meeting dates will depend on the MPV team availability. So the way we've done this is we've grouped the hamlets together. So that Saturday 1, Golden's Bridge and Cross River will have their Saturday. There will be 2 sessions, the 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And childcare will be available at those. So anyone from Golden's Bridge or Cross River can come to either one of those, the morning or the afternoon. The same structure for South Salem and Wacabuck. That's Saturday number 2. And then Saturday number 3, Lewisboro and Vista. And childcare will be available at all of those. And then we've got Sunday town-wide meeting. So anyone from any of the hamlets can come, and that will be at either 6:30 to 8:30 or 7 to 9. We'd love your input on that. The idea here is that it needs to be a time when business owners don't need to be at their place of employment or the shops that they own, etc. So Sunday evening is a good opportunity for that. Translators will be available at that townwide session. And then for the virtual survey, translation will be available, and that's going to be available through the full period. So from the time when we do meeting number 1 to the time when we do the last meeting, maybe a little bit before and a little bit after, we want as much access to the survey as possible. And again, these all cover the same content. So they will have the draft vision statement, the draft goals and objectives. And at the Hamlet meetings, folks will be discussing those through the lens of the Hamlet. At the town-wide meeting, they will be discussing them from the zoomed out lens of the entire town.
You're not going to have any during the week?
No, so good question, Rich. So we're basing these off of our attendance patterns from round 1. And obviously that is a small sample. It's only our first attempt, but it's the only data we have to go off of. So in round 1, the Saturday workshop and the survey were the best attendance. the Monday and the Thursday virtual sessions, we're not nearly as good sign up turnout and even worse actual attendance turnout. So that's what we're going off of. Also, we're tapping into Valerie and her team's expertise here. They note that in-person workshops on weekday evenings don't usually get great attendance. The virtual meetings on weekdays is usually how folks go. But, based on round one, that didn't pan out for us the way that we expected. So that's how we arrived here. I do want to bring the board's attention to a couple things. So one, if the board would like to explore adding additional meetings, like additional townwide meetings, for example, then Valerie and the steering committee can talk you through the additional project funding required there. If you do decide to add more meetings during March, then we will be able to advertise accordingly now. Otherwise, another option is we can always revisit over the summer and initiate follow-up advertising during the summer if we want to have any additional meetings during the fall. Another item I want to bring the board's attention to here, after our 223 meeting, because those are broadcast on YouTube and then posted on our website, the steering committee received feedback from stakeholders in Cross River and Goldens Bridge on this proposed structure of meeting workshops that you're looking at. So they've noted the lack of affinity between the Cross River and Goldens Bridge hamlet and the very separate and different commercial hubs. They requested that their hamlet meetings be separate and that we allocate additional hours to those meetings. Because this would impact the budget for this phase of the project, we discussed this with the town board liaisons and the supervisor ahead of tonight's meeting. The current consensus is to stick to the steering committee's recommendation as you see it on the screen just now. We will need to explore whether we hold the 4 hours allocated to Cross River and Goldens Bridge in one location or in two separate locations, but that will partially depend on venue availability as well.
I think you should take a look at an opportunity for a weekday get together, because what I heard, you're getting feedback from the people who attended a Saturday meeting that they like Saturdays, which would make sense. I'm just looking at the time to
No, what happened is the basis for it isn't feedback from individuals. It was the actual numbers of people who signed up to attend,
Okay.
and in comparison to how many people actually attended. So what we came to find out is that more people showed up on Saturday
Okay.
who signed up, and during the week, people signed up and didn't show, and less people signed up overall.
Fair enough.
And some of the feedback verbally that we were getting, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, was that during the week at night, when we thought it would be best after work, tended to be a problem for a lot of people with small children or coming home from work, that they get involved with having dinner, putting the kids to bed, things like that. So during the evenings, during the week, just was not as likely to attract the number of people that we're looking to attract, and we were more likely to attract more participants with sticking to Saturdays, and then the Sunday we're doing in the evening, specifically so that business owners who may not be able to take off on a Saturday will be able to participate on Sunday, because we've got quite a bit of feedback from local business owners.
That all makes sense. Then with that, thank you for that. So the time of the year, I'm just looking at May into June, and I just know, once a beautiful June Saturday in town, we can, is the time of the year okay to be able to get sufficient turnout, as opposed to,
Well, we figured
early
with
in
the
the-
weather, people are more likely to go out than if it's nasty, because I would have liked to stay home tonight. I don't know about all of you, but they're more likely to show up if the weather is nicer. But also, the reason for the two separate times, the 10:30 a.m. and the 2 p.m. was so that those parents who have sporting events with their kids, usually in the morning or in the afternoon, can pick one or the other, and they're not precluded. from showing up at all. And then the backup is then if they can't make the morning or the afternoon, that there will be a Sunday evening also available, not just limited to business owners, but then a third option for them to also participate on a Sunday.
Okay.
Kate,
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's super helpful context, Andrea. And great question, Rich. I mean, we did consider everything you're asking about. We even considered the time of year and potentially postponing to the fall, but ultimately we decided that we should capitalize on the momentum that we already have. And people that are engaged and might not be engaged in the fall if we pushed then. Another thing I want to mention, and this really highlights what a tricky.
Wait a second, Katie. One of the other reasons was that if we didn't get the participation, if we waited until the fall, then we're kind of run out of time. Whereas if we continue with the momentum up until the summertime when everybody starts taking off and we felt that we didn't get enough participation, we then have the option as a board to determine to spend the extra money and have the extra meetings in the fall and give additional people the opportunity. Had we waited until the fall, we would have run out of time and not had the option of adding more meetings, and perhaps, and could have been that we would have extended the time for the entire master plan, the
No,
whole.
the momentum point makes a lot of sense.
Katie, could I just ask you to clarify now? These meetings are about giving feedback on the draft goals and objectives. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if you'll allow me, I do want to also highlight, and highlights how tricky communicate. This project is such a beast, and communicating all the little details is really tricky. These are open houses. So that really helps with participation as well, that you don't need to commit to coming to the full 2 hours. You can drop in whenever it's convenient for you, stay for 15 minutes and provide some quick feedback, or stay for as long as you want. And to your question, Dan, that what the consulting team is going to prepare and have posted on our website ahead of time so everybody can see before they show up are the draft vision statement. So that's in 10 years, the town of Lewisboro will ... The draft goals and objectives for the comprehensive plan itself. Each session will be focusing on those tangible things and providing your personal input on each of those individual items. So it's much more specific and targeted this time around. Round one was strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and very wide open questions for lots of open-ended feedback. This is going to be much more specific.
And specific to the hamlets too. So it allows the residents of the particular hamlets to pinpoint specific things that they feel that the draft addresses or doesn't address for their particular area.
Exactly. Thanks for all the comments, Andrea. You're really helping me make sure we cover everything. Really appreciate everyone.
You're welcome. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So I think bottom line is we're okay with this. I mean, there's been some exchanges and discussions, and I think we're going to move forward with this, and we'll see how it goes.
Just be mindful of the game schedules when you're looking at Sunday evening. I mean, professional games.
Oh, yeah, professional sports games. Good point.
It's only so much we can take.
Yeah.
No, I know.
But
I got my Australian rules football I gotta watch. I got, come on.
No, I
Okay.
was thinking Yankees and Mets.
I'll take those skyboxes.
Next.
7 line.
I do want to underscore something that Andrea just said, because I think it's really important and helpful, that the way that we've structured this and doing it in May and June, there will be a nice moment to pause, reflect in the summer, and then we can look at attendance patterns. We can look at we can listen to feedback, and if it's feeling like Saturday and Sunday there was a missed opportunity for a weekday that people wanted, we can do that in the fall if the town board wants to allocate additional funding. Yeah, so I think that's just important to keep in mind, that ultimately that will be in your hands to decide if there needs to be additional meetings, but we do have the time and space for it in the project timeline.
Thanks for that, Katie.
Okay, so the last slide I have for you, just closing thoughts. right now in March, we are launching an informational campaign. Because one thing we struggle with is there is just so much information to communicate, so many details about the project and about the meetings. So while we have a break in March and we don't yet have the details of meetings to advertise, we want to take a second and make sure that we spread around town information. We've got 3 flyers. The one you see here is answering the question, did you know Lewisboro is updating its comprehensive plan? And here's what a comprehensive plan is. We also have one that says, why is Lewisboro comprehensive plan getting updated? And then another one that says, how can you get involved? And the QR code there for scanning takes folks directly to our webpage, which again is lewisboro.com, lewisborogov.com/CMPSC. So I will follow up with the board members in the coming days to make sure you have access to the files of those flyers, if you can share them on via email with your contacts over social media. We also are posting them around town, and we have sign-up sheets through each of the Hamlet outreach teams where folks can add the name of a business and mark off if they want to post a poster there, a flyer there, and then mark when it's done. So I encourage everybody to all of the board members to get involved in that. If there's a place that you go on a regular basis and you can just bring a flyer and hang it up and mark it done, that would be super helpful. And we will be communicating on that concept of hanging flyers going forward for the additional rounds of meetings as well. Just getting those posted in public places seems to be a really good way to help get the word out in a different way if people aren't online.
Katie, how many of these have you printed out already?
I don't know the answer to that. So Kirsten in the planning office is doing the printing for us.
The reason I ask is there's an extra apostrophe in that sign, updating its comprehensive plan. It doesn't need an apostrophe there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No, it's a question of I've done a lot of proofreading in my day, so it's not just my library work. It's
Okay, so you have these flyers in your email, and I will make sure you have them again in the next couple of days. So any extra proofreading is always welcome.
And they're on the seats in the room here too.
Yeah, we did distribute them here to the crowd that's here tonight.
Great, thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Katie, for the presentation.
Thank you so much to each of the board members. We really appreciate your engagement and support in helping us increase the outreach going forward. And I will just highlight again, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions, thoughts, comments, anything at all. We're always looking for feedback, and we are very committed to continually evolving the process. And like I said, I will be following up with information, and I will be making a concerted effort to keep you all in the loop very closely going forward. So if the email volume starts to get high, I apologize, but I think that's my best way of making sure you have all the information easily at your fingertips.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Katie.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
You too. Okay, I'm gonna switch things up a little bit because I know our Lieutenant Harry Tompkins is probably gonna have a busy morning tomorrow. So we're gonna jump ahead of you, John, if you don't mind, John, just so we can relieve the lieutenant. So the item we have here, it's the third item on the new business. It's approving the Westchester County Mutual Aid intermunicipal agreement between the county and the town of Lewisboro, and authorizing the supervisor to sign. I think everyone has had a chance to take a look at it. The lieutenant's here to answer any questions anyone may have about this IMA.
Hopefully answering.
Any modifications or changes or anything you want to highlight from prior years, or did
I mean, there's some
anything don't
legalities.
fix?
Yeah, there's some legalities in it, in the actual IMA that the town attorney could certainly go over. But then there's also the mutual aid plan. I don't know if you had an opportunity, that's,
I
you
am.
know, for your review. Just keep that close to you. That's rather sensitive. But the IMA itself, the verbiage in it is all straightforward. Just to give you a little bit of a background about this, there's approximately 40 police agencies within Westchester County and outside of Westchester County, including, you know, Putnam County, that participate in this mutual aid agreement.
So for somebody who's not in law enforcement, tell the public what this does for them and the benefit of having this in place.
Well, this is a plan that's offered to all police agencies within Westchester County and outside of the county. Okay. The biggest thing about this plan is with the institution of Executive Order 203, police reform, and the social media effect in the police world. There's a lot of items that can pop up, such as civil disturbances. There's weather-related disturbances that also pop up that this does address. But probably the biggest concern is the social media effect that we've had. And there's been pop-up demonstrations, and there's large groups that show up at these. And we're very fortunate that this is something that's monitored by Westchester County, by the Real-Time Crime Center. I don't know whether you're familiar with that or not, but they have a MAX unit down there that monitors events like this. And we've been very fortunate in Lewisboro where we have not had any of these pop-up occurrences. But a lot of municipalities have dealt with this, and there could be rather large crowds that can form in a very short period of time. So the plan that Westchester County has, this mutual aid and rapid response plan, is very comprehensive, and it covers all aspects that would address any concerns that the public would have as far as public safety. You know, here in Lewisboro, you know, with the assistance of the ever vigilant state police, we're just not equipped to deal with something in a large mass in a short period of time. If we are part of this mutual aid agreement and plan, that would give us great resources that we could pull from, and it would just be a great asset to the town.
So basically, if we need backup, we can then call on the resources and the personnel of other participating law enforcement agencies to come up and support us.
Correct. It's outlined, as you can see, in the plan. It's very specific. And it's something like anything else, right? When something happens, you have to have a plan. This is the plan. And you know, it's addressed very well. Westchester County Police Department has gone over this for a number of years. It's been in operation. There's been a number of municipalities that have utilized this. We have not, and that's a good thing. But again, it just offers the availability of resources and manpower, if you will, in a rather quick response time.
And just to clarify, Lieutenant, we have access to those resources today if.
Oh, that's
if
correct.
we need it.
Right.
This formalizes the arrangement
Correct.
with this agreement because we have not had this agreement in place.
We have not.
before.
We have not had it. Like I said, of the police agencies in Westchester County, and there's quite a few, there's over 40 agencies that are part of this plan. So.
And then you have the practice sessions as well, where
Yes,
you
yes.
do the exercises.
Right, you
To work out
participate.
all the details.
Correct. You participate
On a regular
in
basis.
exercises, and it puts everybody on the same page.
Right, right.
So it's, you know, I see it, and I know the chief sees it as a, you know, a win-win for the town.
So we haven't historically formalized this before?
Nope. This will be the first time.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do, we don't, because there's no money, we don't need to roll call, or
Correct.
do we?
You can do that by.
Okay.
Actually, we do have the, there was a resolution?
I did a resolution.
You did a resolution on that.
You want to have it, you can read it.
Let me see here.
There's no cost to it. There is indemnification, okay, and there is, if there's an assisting police department that an officer or responder has an injury, then you're responsible for the workers' comp reimbursement for that injury that happened during the course of the aid, which is standard, but there's no annual cost to it at all. And it's a
That falls under the James.
Well,
209, it's, yes, correct. It just implements that.
Do you want,
Yeah,
I've been
I-
asked by the supervisor to read the formal resolution.
Yeah,
So
we, yeah, so this, I forgot that we had the resolution, so, yeah. thank you.
So it's entitled Resolution Authorizing Intermunicipal Agreement with the County of Westchester Mutual Aid and Rapid Response Plan. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Lewisboro, upon the recommendation of the Lewisboro Chief of Police David Alfano, hereby authorizes entry into an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Westchester, adopting and implementing the Mutual Aid and Rapid Response Plan for the police departments of the County of Westchester, and be it further resolved that said intermunicipal agreement shall be for the period commencing retroactive to July 31st, 2020 through and including July 30th, 2025, and shall be in a form and substance as currently on file with the office of the town supervisor. And be it further resolved that the town supervisor, Tony Gonsalves, is hereby authorized to execute the aforementioned agreement and any and all other documentation to effectuate same upon the terms authorized therein.
This is just for the police. It doesn't include the emergency response, the firefighters and, okay.
Right, this is automatically renew after the 5 years or it's.
No, they'll come back and it expires in 25. But it's retro to 20.
20 years, but it's.
So the resolution is offered by
Rich.
by Rich, seconded by
Me.
me. We should go through the roll call. That's on here. So
Absolutely.
roll call, Mary Shaw,
Mary Shaw, yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Rich. I'm a yes, Dan.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Lieutenant.
your time.
Okay, thank you.
Keep
Have a
safe.
good night.
huh?
Okay, John Wolf, I will share your presentation. Let's see here.
So we're about 2 years in from,
Oh, hold on a second. My audio decided. Click on it. Okay, we're good. Yeah.
so the town board passed the tree ordinance, not quite 2 years ago. When we checked about a year ago, there had been no permits issued, no violations issued, yet we knew there were violations in town. We felt that people weren't aware of it, so we sent out a postcard. That went out, I think, late in the year, so everybody in town should be aware of it. And we don't really have much in the pasture, although there's been a couple of some. Tony and I went out and found one. But in reviewing the ordinance, I found 4 things that needed, that I would recommend that we update. The first is Westchester County actually requires the tree cutters to be licensed. So I think we needed to add that wording into our ordinance. And if you all got copies of the detailed wording, I'm not going to go through that, but I put in a way you can check, so you can easily go, I won't say easily, but you can find a path on their website, put the name of your tree cutter in and see if they're licensed. I put mine in and he was. But I suspect there's quite a few that aren't. So that's number one. Number two, we had an incident that somebody hired a logging company to clear cut their property in the guise of doing new construction. But we don't think that's really what's intended by the tree ordinance for new construction, to just cut every tree
This
out.
is just total, so I was driving up 22 towards North Salem, there's a hole on the way towards Birdie's. Seems like.
I think that's nice, Ed.
And they're
They're, yeah.
into the.
I don't know for sure, but it looks like they're gonna redo the poles and wires.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, they
Up
get
to
to
the
do
poles.
whatever they want.
Yeah.
But this was a complete, I mean, they didn't even hire a tree cutter, they hired a logging company. So I looked at the language, and the language isn't the best. So I've updated the language, and really the idea is you need to specify the trees when you're doing new construction that need to come down. It's very similar to what is in the wetland law. So it becomes part of the building permit. The third one is just a mistake. Okay, if you read the section on the special character district overlay, it basically says you can do whatever you want, which is the opposite of what usually happens in the special character district overlay. So Rose Bonanno and I have agreed on language in both her section and this section to clean that up. And then the fourth one is new. It's a recommendation of in the penalty phase of asking having people replace the trees. And I put a table in there based on the size of the trees cut, how many you need to replace it with. And I borrowed this from another town. That's something new. And it's a possibility that you could do a replacement instead of a fine, or you could reduce the fine if you did replacement. That's an option, but that's something that the town board can consider adding to the ordinance or not. So.
Which was the other town that you borrowed that?
I borrowed it from Poughkeepsie.
Okay.
They have a pretty detailed, they had a nice detailed table.
Mhm,
So, and again, you can adjust that or whatever. And of course, now any of this wording has to go before the town attorney anyway.
Right.
So, the other thing I did is I called a few towns to see how things were going with them. I called Bedford, North Salem, and Pound Ridge. Bedford, all three were, well, I didn't ever heard from Pound Ridge, but I think it is. They all come through the building inspector. Bedford, I talked to the building inspector and they have an enforcement officer in town. So when they get something comes before them, Pound Ridge didn't respond. And North Salem has one person who does building, wetland, and trees. And I talked with him extensively, and he said because he has all three jobs, he actually has a pretty good feel for what's going on in town in terms of the trees and everything, except on weekends.
Okay.
And the one main difference there is that violations are referred to the planning board, similar to what goes on with the wetland. He said it took a number of years for the tree ordinance to kind of take hold in town.
Right.
So that's what I'm proposing. I think the first three are pretty clear. The fourth one is something you have to decide whether you add to it or.
Right.
By way of moving authority. Where do we leave off on our?
But
Right.
it could be an amendment, but so I think
We have to draft it, right?
we need to take a look at it. We need to get council's opinion. Yes. So we're not making a decision tonight.
Yeah, no, that's just the one we initially enacted it. Right?
Went through several drafts.
Right,
For over several months.
yeah, I know, I remember.
I would draft up with the recommendations that I was suggesting that there is a recommendation I think we've got to do about the special overlay character district. And that's in zoning, you have to refer that, even the minor.
Right.
Even the minor change that that'll have to refer to. And you can refer to 203 section.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Rose and I went over the wording carefully, so at least we're in agreement on the change.
Right.
One of the things I added to hers is in their section, they didn't have anything about safety of the house, so.
Right.
So I guess
Okay.
next step is for Greg to take a stab at drafting with the input.
Yeah, and us also,
Yeah.
whatever info we may have, we feed it back to Greg.
Yeah, just let Greg do the initial drafting.
The replacement
So-
trees. Are they defined in some way? I mean, a tree is, there's a lot.
Well, we define it in terms of the size of the one you cut down, how many, a certain size you need to price it with, but there's a table in there.
So right, I'm looking at the table.
Do we
and-
define the actual tree now? I don't think
Yeah, so in other words, if I have a tree that's 12 inches or whatever. And it needs to be replaced by 3 trees, that's not 3 12-inch
no,
trees, it's like
I gave the
3.
specific widths of everything.
Okay, because I just don't see that in the table.
We have an arborist involved, so you could use the arborist to decide what kinds of trees.
Well, I just meant how, I mean, you could have a,
Yeah, now,
Sapling.
if you cut down an 18-inch tree, we're not gonna ask you.
So, you know, it's a sapling or it could be a, you know, an established
Yeah.
tree or
No,
something.
I think the table specifies size.
John, with the fourth component, the penalty component you're proposing. You see any, what do you see by way of, and I'm not sold on that necessarily, but. What do you see by way of enforcement? Is that enforceable, if that's a word? Here. Based upon what we have.
Well, today we have a pretty hefty fine per tree. So, and when I looked at it, I said, one of the options would be, okay, rather than pay $250 per tree. We plant some trees, maybe the fine gets reduced or eliminated. So I think it is enforceable. One of the difference I think with ours is ours probably goes to the courts when there's a violation. The advantage I saw with North Salem is it goes to the planning board, which is a little simpler. But I talked to Janet Anderson, she wasn't sure she wanted to take on more. But yeah, I think it isn't, you know, in the same way the wetland law has this, you know, they have this specification. And it is enforceable there. Now, again, we have a wetland inspector, so that makes it easier, but Kevin's here, so I thankful him.
Lucky man.
But Kevin and I have talked about this. You know,
That's fine.
pardon?
But if it's fee, we'd have to.
Well, planning board exercises fines, so.
They on the planning board, exercise more jurisdiction for sanctioning. You can do administrative fines or civil penalties in the courts, where you can do fines. So, but
And a fee sounds like it's sort of, it's okay, just pay the fee, and you can, you know, it's a
If you
fee.
went out and inspected and you noted that there were 8 trees down, it's in your town code, they cutting trees without a permit is the, you know, each caliber, it's a fee for maybe it's per inch. We'll get the message pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I think you can't just impose fees without, I think you get into legal
process.
issues. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, due process issues.
I think the planning board calls it penalties, and they do impose that.
Correct. However, we don't want our building inspector going out there doing that and then, you know,
No.
causing a problem for himself or anything else. So, but an agency, an authority such as a court or a planning board is different because people then have the right to come in and speak on their own behalf. There's a process and there's due process. But if you just have one person imposing fees or fines or what have you, then you're depriving the residents of due process and we run into problems. So,
You know, I think that's the advantage of what they do in North Salem, is I think it's more straightforward to go, because it works well for the wetland law, so.
Yes, and what concerned me, like, you were talking about the restoration plan standards, the language, I'm concerned about. Any subjectivity, and I'm also concerned about the process dragging. The intent is a good one, the idea you want, okay, ameliorate what the issues are. Fix it, as it were, and restore it, but it shouldn't be a situation where. It's bogging down, whether it's wherever, planning board, building, wherever, it should be swift, whatever it is to
we
address
have
it.
time to think about it. We're going to get it in the
Yeah.
first draft and then we can banter it back and forth.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, you know, it works for the wetland law, there's. You know, there's a time period and there's. So I would.
Well,
hope-
that's exactly what I'm getting at. I mean, from a wetlands violation, having been on the planning board,
Right.
and as you know well, that can take a while.
Yeah, but it gets done, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, one option is to change this from courts to planning board, you have to.
Right, and you also, right, I'm also concerned from a cost standpoint. So we have a process, even for wetlands violation, you don't want the cost of navigating through the process to be more than addressing what the issue is. Doesn't make any sense.
But if you look at the fines in the current law, they're hefty, I mean, much, you know. They're significant, I mean, whereas with the wetland law, there's some options, in this law, there's not, it's
Right.
$250 to $500 a tree. So-
What he does with the schedule is introduce a little working room
Right.
available to
Well,
remedy this situation.
Well, the intent, I agree with the intent, and I agree with the purpose, it's just, you know.
Well, that's what you guys paid to do us. But it also helps restore the property,
So,
and our client doesn't do anything.
Yeah, the intent and the purpose,
So,
thank you, John.
Thank
all right.
you.
Thank you.
And thank
Thank
you
you,
to
John.
the other members of the Conservation Advisory Council for pulling this
Yeah,
together.
absolutely. We've got a great team this year.
Excellent, very good. Thank you very much, Sean. Okay. Okay, so the next item is resolution approving city wind carding application for license to collect and dispose of refuse and recyclables. So this is it's an annual renewal. Is that correct, Janet?
Correct.
Yes. So we're just renewing the agreement we have with city carding to allow them to
I'll move.
collect.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have a resolution to confirm our building inspector, Kevin Kelly, who is here in person as our stormwater management officer and fire inspector. The stormwater management officer, that came up as a result of work that we're doing with the DEC, and we needed to name a stormwater management officer.
The part of the MS4.
Yes, the
requirements
MS4.
Or something.
Right.
And for the folks at home, the MS4 is,
Municipal separate storm sewer systems.
thank you.
Just essentially an agreement we make with the state for handling our stormwater stuff.
Correct, that's correct. Right. So we prior to Kevin, we actually had it was a prior building inspector going back a little bit, it was named, so we've never updated that, so we
Do you
should
want
be
me to read
updating it. If you would like to read the resolution, absolutely. There you go.
Resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro hereby appoints Kevin Kelly as fire inspector pursuant to chapter 92 of the Lewisboro Town Code, and specifically with respect to section 9211-11 thereof, and be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro hereby appoints Kevin Kelly as stormwater management system operator pursuant to chapter 188 of the Lewisboro Town Code.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Did I just
Did you move?
Oh,
move?
I thought that's what you.
I was just reading it.
Okay, so I-
But
I thought that was
If
the
you
move.
want
I thought
me
that
to
was the
move.
I will move.
Okay, move. No, you're
Okay.
so moved. And I'll second. Roll call. Mary,
Yes,
and
I think it's just an
But
all in
it's-
favor aye.
Yeah,
according to the,
You can do, I write. it
I'm going by what
and I
council-
apologize. There's nothing you can't do. There's something
Okay,
you have.
got it.
So You can do it all in favor.
so since we have your document already, which is going to Janet, so we'll do the roll call. Mary,
aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Rich. I'm an aye, Dan.
Aye.
Okay, excellent.
yeah, I have.
You guys have it.
Congratulations, Kevin. What
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm gonna put this out.
your anointment.
Okay, next item is, it's a resolution confirming Eric Swordhout as the OSPEC chair,
So moved.
The open space.
open space,
Or
And-
open space preserves.
Preserves Advisory Council.
Thank you for your service, so moved.
Second.
Mary, discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is the resolution approving Keller session agreements and authorizing the supervisor to sign. So these are the agreements that are
For this year.
the annual work the Keller session does for the municipal separate storm sewer systems compliance certification. And why don't I just read the resolution that we're gonna put together?
This is just what's, so how is, this is for the,
This is for the work to flat out like the outfalls
They
and
do
all
the-
that.
yeah,
They
they
actually physically go out
I
there.
was implementing the thing from the MS. Quinn.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 reports.
I'd like,
GIS.
The MS4, I remember that.
I'd like to ask a question without anybody out in TV land or anybody here freaking out, but Why do we always hire Keller Sessions? Has anybody else ever applied for this? Have we ever had anybody else in this position? I'm just wondering why this name comes up and again. It's just a question.
For this particular.
Just for everything. It's just, we only seem to use Keller Sessions. And so now, since this is what's on the agenda, I would like to know why for this specific.
I think the, using them for this is kind of just an easy extension from the fact that we use them for our general
There are wetlands
consulting, but
and
but
planning
the-
engineer.
using them for our townwide engineering and wetlands consultants. I mean, that's something, we can go out to bid and we have in the past, but.
But this isn't
not
something we
often.
need to go out to bid for because it's a service that's.
It's all professional services.
Okay.
Your procurement policy for the main contract would probably dictate an RFP. This particular set, I think, is under $20,000.
Right.
So you wouldn't even have to do an RFP.
Because it's under the 35.
But we've,
It's professional services.
Yeah.
There's no bidding, there's no GML to it, it's exempt. The question is what should the procurement policy say for professional services over a certain threshold? And the two together, I think it's about 20, is it not? I put it in the resume.
yeah, that sounds,
So you could get quotes. But you also, the procurement policy is waivable. That's just a policy you have to have in effect.
right,
You can diverge from the policy if the case is warranted.
right.
I think the reason the Keller session is because they're your primary engineering consultant, it makes sense that the MS4 stuff
Right.
is something that they get.
Okay.
And just to add to that, so when we had to do engineering work at the town park for the new playground, which included the stormwater and DEC stuff, I did inquire with another firm that I have been in touch with regarding another project. And they actually wanted double what Keller Sessions charged us.
Well, not
Yeah.
only that, but also looking, it is there, we should revisit, kind of picking up where Andrew is, whether this should be in-house, should we have a town engineer? Is that based upon what our work is, across a whole bunch of areas? Something to take a look at, that we should
Yeah,
have a
that's-
town engineer on staff.
When I first joined, way back in dinosaur days, we had consultants, but they were individual consultants. So it almost felt like, an in-house engineer. But the issue was that the work comes in, kind
Ebbs
of
and flows.
ebbs and flows, that it's not that easy for an individual to like pick that up real quickly if they have to. So I think there's pros and cons either way. There's, we could consider, but that's kind of the.
Yeah, I mean, I think
consideration there.
it's just something to maybe take a look at as we move towards the budget process to see if it's something that we want to.
Yeah, you don't think it's gonna be like, it's not, certainly not gonna be like a tremendous money saver. If you look at what our contract rates are, relative to hiring somebody on, it's not like order of magnitude gonna be some big difference, I don't think. So it would be more about sort of responsiveness and, going where we want to go with things, I think.
That may be the conclusion, and that just
Good.
like it's assurance that we've checked it out and we know that
Yes,
this is, we're going. the way.
in my memory of what the contract, the Keller contract costs, I'm saying, and relative to what a person would cost.
We're just.
Right, because you do have benefits,
Yeah.
which you have to take into consideration. If you do hire someone in-house,
Yeah.
and then, you may not have the expertise for
Well,
varying projects like we.
And we can
today.
go out for an RP next time, just to make sure we're triangulating and we get,
I was just curious, this is, it's as long as I've lived in town, Keller Sessions has been here. And I sometimes get questions from residents asking me why, so I figure I might as well ask the question. And you guys have been here longer than me, historic wise, so
Mhm.
Yeah, they were.
never hurts to revisit, right?
No, no.
You can do that, you always learn stuff when you. So.
And also to make sure, their institutional memory has a value, and also make sure that they're, equipped and what they provide is current and best possible services we can get.
Sure.
Okay, so this, does somebody want to read the resolution since it's authorizing me to sign?
I'm reading it.
She's not moving.
You're not making
So you're just reading and then we'll move, okay.
A resolution accepting proposal and authorizing entry agreement for professional services MS4IDDE, and municipal compliance and report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro hereby authorizes the acceptance of the proposal of Keller Sessions Consulting, Engineering and Landscape Architecture Planning, Armonk, New York, for services to be rendered to the town of Lewisboro in connection with municipal separate storm sewer systems compliance certification and annual/semi-annual reporting for year 2023 at a cost not to exceed $5,700, and be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro hereby authorizes the acceptance of the proposal of Keller Sessions Consulting, Engineering, and Landscape Architecture Planning, Armonk, New York, for services to be rendered to the town of Lewisboro in connection with the municipal separate storm sewer systems, illicit discharge detection and elimination, as well as GIS stormwater data maintenance for the year 2023 at a cost not to exceed $8,600, and be it further resolved that said agreement shall be in the form and substance as currently on file with the town or the office of the town supervisor, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor, Tony Gonsalves, is hereby authorized to execute the aforementioned agreements and any and all other documentation to effectuate same upon the terms authorized therein.
Somebody want a motion?
I move what you said.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Discussion? All in favor?
Take that one.
Yeah. So roll call, Mary,
Shaw, yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Rich, Dan,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Okay, so next we have another resolution approving VRI agreement and authorizing the supervisor to sign. So VRI are the administrators or the operations folks for both Wild Oaks wastewater, Oak Ridge wastewater, Oak Ridge water, and Keeler Fields Water District. And so the rates are what we're paying today. Prior agreement had regular increments based on CPI, Consumer Price Index. So we're just renewing the agreement with the current rates that we pay.
Okay, so no, so
So,
doesn't have the same agreement. essentially.
so it's basically
With the rates that we pay to VRI.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, it's entitled Resolution Authorizing Entry into Agreement for Wastewater and Waste District Operations and Maintenance. Resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro, acting as commissioners of the various sewer and water districts within the town of Lewisboro, hereby authorizes the entry into agreements with VRI Environmental Services, Inc., LaGrangeville, New York, for operation and maintenance services in the following water and sewer districts within the town. 1, Wild Oaks Sewer District at an annual cost of $69,501.48. Keeler Field Water District at an annual cost of $11,846.64. Oak Ridge Water District at an annual cost of $51,810. Oak Ridge Sewer District at an annual cost of $77,715.36. And be it further resolved that said agreement shall be for an initial term of 3 years and shall be in form and substance as currently on file with the office of the town supervisor, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor, Tony Gonsalves, is hereby authorized to execute the aforementioned agreements and any and all other documentation to effectuate same upon the terms authorized therein.
Is this one of the things that we can do an RFP for in
We can.
the
Absolutely.
future?
We can. Just based on what in talking to other folks, prior supervisor included, about the management of these special districts. We've had DRI is like the fourth entity that we've had, but so far the one we've had the longest. So we can still, we have that option to go out and get bids.
This is a three-year term on the agreement.
Correct.
And just so everybody out there understand, just because we go out for an RFP doesn't mean that we have to change who we hire. It's just to get an idea as to whether or not the prices that we have are fair market value, for lack of a better term, with other companies that could provide the same service.
How? Tony, just to put you in the
Mhm.
spot with your engineering hat, the cost of the different. Keeler and Oak and
Right.
Wild Oaks,
Mhm.
the amount that's charged, is it based upon? Volume of how does that, some kind of ratio that where they come up with some kind of number, right?
Yeah, it's based, well, you
The
look at
size
the
of the
numbers,
system
it's the
or
size of the system and the
capacity?
how much work they and folks that they have present at the district.
Okay,
So that's why you're gonna see Oak Ridge is most expensive, because it's both water and sewer. And that's where they spent a lot of time. Wild Oaks is the second, Wild Oak sewer.
So they
It's
actually
second most
specify
expensive.
like staffing shall be one certified operator for 14 hours a week. and-
Right.
So they scope it out.
so based upon the needs of the particular system and the personnel, that's how they're coming.
That's
into it.
Correct,
Okay.
right, yeah,
The type of treatment.
that too, the operations and maintenance, that's, yeah,
Sewer has micropollution.
right, right.
That's why it's much higher than what it is. Virtually.
Right.
Or, first unit point, and it's, thinking process of doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you for the 90 seconds of education.
So we could go out to bid here. My sense is that we have something that seems to be working now, and this is such a
Yeah,
sensitive area that to go for like the evil we don't know. Seems uncalled for. I'm curious, like these dollar amounts, like what percentage of the average, unit rate they actually are, in other words, if we were to go say $5,000 on a contract, like would that have a material, significant difference to an average ratepayer anyway, So
Yeah,
my
that's-
sense is we should not rock the boat on this one.
well, that was,
Smaller,
so, yeah, so my point about saying that we've had 4 other operators
Yeah.
and this one seems to be the most stable.
Yeah, it's
one.
not easy to
Yeah, yeah.
be sort of reasonably grudgingly happy.
right,
but,
Well,
Yep.
speaking as one of the new people, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Agreed.
So. Somebody motion.
I'll motion.
Your motion, okay,
I'll second.
roll call, or discussion. Roll call, so Mary,
Shaw is yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Rich?
Yeah.
Dan,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay. Takes care of that.
3 legs.
So next, we have, I just wanted to share with the board just some information. I think I might have spoken to all of you, a few of you individually about this, but we had in 2021, there was an engineering study performed by 3 different engineering firms, paid for by the DEP for Lakes Kitchewan, Truesdale, and Wacabuck. And this was to determine the amount of phosphorus pollution that's going into these lakes. So those studies were done. So now the next step is, okay, what do we do now with those studies?
They
They
determined the amount of phosphorus, and they also came out with sort of preliminary like scenarios.
correct for each of the lakes, like
Yeah.
whether it's, makes sense to have a wastewater treatment plant or community septic or handle each septic system individually, get the owners to upgrade them and make sure they're not failing. So the East Hudson Watershed Corporation with DEP funds is now, they went out to bid, and Woodard and Curran, which is the engineering company that did the study for Lake Kitchewan, won the bid. So they're going to do a feasibility study where now they're going to come in and determine for the 7 lakes in town, they're going to have recommendations. Do we want to have maybe a centralized wastewater treatment for 2 of the 3 lakes, or 3 lakes, or 4 lakes, and where should they be? So that's part of the work that they're going through now. But in the meantime, since
Will that give us like sort of more of a shovel ready kind of package that we can actually?
yeah, it'll give us, for example, with the engineering studies that were done, they were individualized, right? For the 3 lakes.
So they're gonna,
So they're gonna take a holistic approach.
right,
And they're gonna say, okay, this is our recommendation.
because there was kind of a proposal or the folks were coming together and saying, let's put this all together.
Right,
And
exactly.
I was approached with questions too, because a lot of funding and questions came up, obviously, because it's very expensive.
Mhm.
And because the lake districts are, and the enjoyment of the lakes are limited to those who have vested lake rights in their property, how are they gonna pay for it? So there was some question posed as, sometimes they're gonna require perhaps a sewer district be created or another water district be created, et cetera. And what's the process to apply to the town board to allow for such a district to be created, et cetera, et cetera. So I would assume that part and parcel of this project that's coming up is going to incorporate not only what the possible end results are, but also a path to get there.
Correct. And part of that path is indeed creating these special districts, right? Because that's how they would get funding. Because the funding that's available out there goes to municipalities.
Correct.
And
So there would have to be districts, and if they're districts, then they are eligible for funding
correct.
and
Right.
loans and low interest things and those sorts of.
Exactly. So right now this is, there's a lakes committee that's been formed over a year ago. And they've been having regular meetings. I've been involved in those meetings. I think, Dan, you've been in a few. Jen Anderson has, she's part of this. We've had DEC attend the meetings as well. And in terms of the funding, so last year DEC and DEP, they came to an agreement, which this was in August of last year, where we have access to about $25 million for this project from that agreement.
How much?
25 million. And it's about, so there's 4 lakes included in that agreement, which I have the agreement here. So let me see.
What's the title of the agreement again?
The title of the agreement is New York State Department of Environmental Conservation contract number. It's got a contract number. So I'll just read the summary. This contract is entered into by and between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, having offices up in Albany, and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, having offices in Flushing, New York. So basically this, they have an appropriated budget of $200 million for water quality projects within the New York City watershed. So of that 200 million, we have, there it is. So we're part of the East of Hudson communities,
Yes.
so Putnam, Westchester. There's 25 million to support construction of community wastewater solutions for Lake Wacabuck, Lake Truesdale, Lake Kitchewan, and Crown Falls, which is North Salem. So that's roughly for our 3 lakes. It's roughly $6.25 million per. So that's some initial funding that's available to us if we decide to move forward with these special districts. It's going to take a lot more money depending on what we end up doing potentially. But in speaking to the DEC, there's lots of money out there for these types of projects. And so, this is just a summary, just so everyone knows where discussions have been had. And, there's still more discussions to be had. We're waiting for the Woodard and Curran feasibility study to be completed. I think it's the end of this month. They'll have that completed. And once they present that to us, we'll know what the next steps would potentially be. The Lakes Committee, they actually have a couple of pretty smart people on board. They put together a concept plan that includes Lake Wacabuck as well as Oskalita and Rippewam as one, and then Lake Kitchewan, Lake Truesdale, and a centralized wastewater treatment plant for all those lakes. And they've mapped out where sewer mains would run and it's that's a pretty long-term project. We may not start with that. It would probably be a phased approach. And for example, maybe Lake Kitchewan is going to require only to have septic systems to be upgraded. So there'll be a special district for that, for improving septic systems.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of skepticism that maybe they were a little too far to actually.
Right, yeah, if you look on a map,
So,
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
but of course, this is gonna take, you know, a lot of work. It's gonna require, you know, us to vote on whether we want to do that. And then, of course, there has to be, and I was talking to Greg briefly about this. It's gonna take, it's gonna require the residents to vote on it as well, right?
To form.
Yeah.
because of The formation of the district.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah. And I could, you know, maybe Greg, in terms of the formation of the district, this is gonna require, if we did that,
I think signatures and things to apply to us to create the district, yeah.
There's two procedures. Article 12 of the town law, if at least half of the owners of half of the assessed valuation within the proposed district present a petition, then the district can be formed. There's still a state controller approval component to it.
right?
Then the town board can do it on its own initiative, but that's subject to a permissive. That's how Article 12 acts.
Mhm.
So.
Right.
And then when you get to that, then you're going to have to figure out what the typical, for the state controller purposes, what the typical cost for district homeowner is.
Right,
And that's usually what sends people running, if they're going to go running those numbers right there. For collection
Yeah.
system design, construction administration, construction of the collection system and a treatment plant.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
yeah, our contact at the EC gave some numbers.
Then O&M is,
Yeah.
operations and maintenance is, when you're done.
Mhm.
But the capital is usually the biggest hit.
Yeah.
It's always the biggest hit.
Right,
So it's on the agenda for tonight.
well,
Just for that
this is
update.
just a discussion, just an update, so the board
Okay.
is aware of what I've been working on, and yeah, very early stages, but
So we don't have to vote on anything tonight.
no, we're not voting on putting in a sewer district.
Thank you.
We would have been here till next meeting. Okay. We doing public comment?
So yeah, so we have the other thing I wanted to mention is, and I sent an email out to the board, we have this community project funding. So if you recall, with our prior Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, it was through that community project funding program that we were awarded the $1.8 million for Oak Ridge. Well, Congressman Mike Lawler has now presented us with fiscal year 2024, the community project funding. It's limited in scope in terms of the federal agencies that are contributing to it or part of it this year. And he didn't give us too much time. It's due on Wednesday, the response. And I got the email from them on, I think it was March.
Was
Over
last
the
week.
weekend. It was
Last week
It was
sometime.
on a Sunday. I got something on a Friday, but then on Sunday they sent another email. And their deadline is March 15th. Depending on the program, that's to get the application into the congressman's office for them to review. But then depending on the eligible, like for example, there's energy and water, there's Army Corps of Engineers, there's Department of the Interior, there's Department of Justice. So there are different deadlines for those. So one of them is a subset is March 24th. That the congressman's office would send our application in by, and then March 29th and March 31st. Those are the three. So we have until the 15th to submit and it's online. It's a fairly, you don't have to provide too much detail. So we can kind of come up with a figure.
So what's the
pick a
kind of
project
allowable
and-
scope for the 15th submissions? Like what?
So we need to know what
type of
project,
item?
what type of project. So that's, I reached out to see if you guys had any feedback. I spoke to Nicole about some of the, we had some outstanding, if you look at the list that we were looking at.
Yes, I'm well aware of that one.
Yeah, so we can incorporate some of that stuff. into this, a general, I have her email. So we came up with a figure between the bathhouse, the platform tennis, which, by the way, the school district is probably going to take down the existing platform tennis.
As long as they don't charge us for half
Recently.
of that.
Yes, after the season, they're saying, so we have pickleball courts, platform tennis, some compost toilets. Play structure at the pool, the wading pool, the pool bathhouse. So we roughly came up with a number that's going to exceed $1.6 million. We're rounding it up because the congressman said there's no limit.
I say we shoot for the moon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I agree.
And then the details come afterwards.
Yeah,
So we
I
can shoot
think
for the moon
we-
now and then.
Really, we need
That's it.
that, we need
Yeah.
the water filtration
the
system
big one.
there. At the bare minimum, we need the bathhouse
Right.
and the platform tennis. People are asking for that. Pickleball courts are also in high demand.
What's the scope of this grant? This is under what?
So the grant it's part of the congressional earmarks that the government did away with, and then they started them up again in 2022.
In my
so-
opinion, anything having to do with water and water treatment are more likely to be granted than
Yeah,
other things, and that should be
Well, let me read to you the letter.
priority.
well,
Part of it. We're excited about the opportunity to work with you to help fund projects that uplift Hudson Valley communities and provide a better quality of life to our residents. So yeah, you can include water in that. Recreation, of course, right?
And Wild Oaks for the water, isn't there?
The water's not us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Totally.
private. We're responsible for the wastewater. Now, I thought about the wastewater because there is an issue there with what they call I&I, inflow and infiltration. Where when we get massive rainstorms and stormwater or snow melt, it's getting into the sewer.
even like tonight.
There's a
Like
need-
tonight
there's a
potentially,
need
yeah.
for another well.
So, no, well, that's on the water side, so that's private. But one of my thoughts was, okay, do we want to pursue repairing that sewer district so that we don't have this I&I issue? But we don't know enough about that. I mean, I could put in a number. I think we looked at this
Didn't we
before
do
my
some
time.
work-
before.
Some work
Yeah.
on that at one point.
They scoped it, with a video camera and we couldn't find, I looked, I asked around, Janet helped. Just try to find the that report and the video, but we couldn't find
Is
it.
the grant application, is this as a block? In other words, can they say, okay, let's say we round it up to 2 million, right?
Mhm.
And they say, okay, we're gonna give you X for this component, Y for this component. In other
Or can
words,
we just say we have all
They-
this stuff and we think it's this?
Well, they
Number.
want us to focus on a priority project. Now, if within that priority project is multiple items like, platform tennis, pickleball, it's all part of the town park.
I like that idea.
Enhancement of the town park. I did think of Wild Oak Sewer, because now, what does that buy us by fixing that issue, right? It potentially allows you to, for example, if the Lewisboro Shopping Center wants to tap into it. Because we've talked about that. They are interested, in order to do some of the things they want to do, they have to tap into a much bigger and better sewage system than we have today.
I guess my point is how we maximizing our chance of getting it. In other words, if we're packaging it as town park,
Mhm.
Lewisboro Town Park infrastructure improvements, and under that, all the things that,
Oh, yeah,
Andrew and Mary are talking about.
correct.
Is that maximizing our chance to get the money
Yeah,
by having that, singular focus with different subcomponents?
yeah,
I don't know.
I believe that that's the case, that we can call it, it's our town park, much needed enhancements.
It's co-
And then
it's
you-
coherent.
It's.
Yeah.
It's the jewel of the town of
Right.
Lewisboro.
Right.
And it serves so many
Now-
people in so many different ways.
So the so I'm not sure how many municipalities fall within the congressman's district, but he's limited to only 15 projects. So our project needs to really
The same thing with Maloney, was like, can they have 10?
Well, Maloney's was, yeah, it was 10, but it was across more government.
I think the water
Agencies.
well issue would do that because that project in and of itself affects everything else that goes on in the park. It affects camps, it affects the playground, it affects the baseball fields, because it's insufficient as it stands now to continue to meet the needs of the activity that goes on there.
It's grandfathered in, and it's really important that we
That's
get
like,
that.
so we have
Sounds great.
500,000 with
Yeah.
leave room to spare.
And it
So yeah,
goes into all,
we
it
didn't,
hooks into the bathhouse, it hooks into the baseball fields, it hooks into the playground. It's
So
just,
that would be at the top of the list. The
okay, so,
filtration
so the
system.
water system.
Well, this is,
Here.
that's the item we kind of didn't squarely address with the
That's right.
ARPA stuff, so yeah, we're picking up on that, so it's complementary to what we were doing.
Yeah,
In
and
the
that's the
session.
other point. So we'll probably find out whether or not we get this grant. It's tied to the fiscal year, the federal fiscal year, right? So which ends in September. I think it's October 1st is the start of the fiscal year. So
You know, we
unless
hear about it in
the
September
government,
when they all decide not to agree on the
That's what
budget.
well, that's what happened
Yeah.
with the Maloney money, because it wasn't until March of the following year that the federal budget was settled, and we found out that we were part of the award.
So we should put
so
the
but do we
500,000
all
for that.
agree that this is the
Mhm.
project we want,
Mhm.
we would like Tony to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Are you good with that, Rich?
With 500,000.
Closer to 2 million.
Yeah.
No, no, which, are we talking about the pool? Oh. so-
Everything.
I mean, oh, the all in, okay. that's-
Yeah,
oh, yeah, okay.
round it up. Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. Are we better
And maybe,
focusing on what it's supposed to?
Electronic vehicle, charging stations, including that.
Can you put an umbrella of it, like it's make it ADA compliant, accessible?
That's a good point. We certainly do that. So this is Kevin Kelly, our building inspector is in the audience, so he's recommending, I don't know if people on Zoom can hear you.
Yeah.
But yes, we can put an ADA, we can use that to, yeah,
There are
Exactly, yeah.
several aspects of
yes. that's a good point.
compliance that we would like to do.
Yes.
Increasing the number of changing rooms to,
I bet catchy.
Acceptability.
yeah.
Yes,
Compliance and that, which lean heavily.
Checks a
well,
lot
that would be
box.
part of the ultimate footprint of the new bathhouse.
Right.
But a little alliteration, town of Lewisboro infrastructure improvement, infrastructure improvement initiative.
Oh my gosh, that does not roll off the tongue. I'm just gonna be straightforward with you. So yes,
Good,
we
okay.
all agree.
All right, so good. So
Public
I'll work on
comment
that. Yeah, so we can move forward. Yes, I'll work on that.
Tomorrow.
It'll be done by 6 PM on Wednesday. So that's
No
what-
sleeping allowed.
No.
Okay.
So, okay, so I guess the next is, yeah, public comment for new business only. Anyone here? Lend a favor.
Just have a question.
Introduce yourself for the.
I'm
folks-
sorry. I forgot you know me, but they don't know me in TV land.
That's right.
Glenn DeFaber, Cross River. I have a question. All the resolutions have a dollar amount attached to them, so full transparency, we all know what's being paid. The only one that doesn't have it is the new extra duties for the building inspector. Does that mean that's included in his salary, or is that an additional stipend?
It's included.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Um,
And he's not going to be doing much work.
Okay.
As far as those.
One other thing. If we get sewers, like for our lakes, would that then allow us to have higher density multifamily housing, say in Walkabuck, considering that's the largest open area in town? Would that be a possibility?
That would
I
require a change
don't-
in the zoning.
Yeah.
Well, maybe with Hochul's directive.
The comprehensive plan might be a way to.
Oh, I think
address
that's
that.
another way. Yes, I think.
Council has a, said yeah.
The comp plan is where they dictate what the recommended zoning.
Right.
So you can provide your
Well,
input.
you know, I
For
think
the
5
comprehensive
stories
plan.
right off Mead Street would be beautiful. Thank you.
Anybody else here? No, how about Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
Carol. Cernak. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, it's Carol Cernak, 70 Spring Street South, South Salem, New York. Glenn actually asked my first question about the additional duties for the building inspector. And I was wondering if that was included in his salary and already negotiated, or if that was going to be a stipend. So I have that answer. My second question is the open space preserve, the OSPAC, is that what it's called?
Yes.
I was wondering, Tony, if you've had a chance to confirm whether or not the Wallace Nature Preserve that's adjoining the Salt Dome has been included in the preserves in the town of Lewisboro, because I haven't heard any follow-up on that. And I think that's an important point in how we move forward with what goes on to the surrounding area and how it affects the water in the wetlands and stuff like that. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Carol.
Carol. Thank you, Carol. Barbara Mangione, I'm asking you to unmute.
How's that, Janet?
We can hear you, yep.
Okay. Tony, you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting about a letter that was sent to Governor Hochul regarding the New York State Housing Compact and some issues that several supervisors of ours and neighboring towns had with it. And you mentioned that it would be included in the minutes of this meeting, and I guess you have to approve those minutes at the next meeting. I was just wondering if there's any way you can post that letter on the town's website tomorrow or Wednesday. The reason I'm asking is I am watching a virtual program being presented by the League of Women Voters on Wednesday night, where Assemblyman Burdick is going to be talking about the same issue. So I'd like to have a little more information about it. Thank you.
I'll make sure it gets posted.
It'll get posted Wednesday.
Okay. And I can also email it to you, Barbara, or anyone else that wants it.
Is it on there, Bowman?
There's a link. There is a link I can, yeah. Anyone else?
Good. Just where we at, I'm a little confused now where we are public comment wise, because I thought when we're listed as public, we had a work session, it was like a hybrid last time. Now we're at a regular town board meeting and we have public comment for new business only at the end. So
Correct.
where are we at? So where's the public comment opportunity for just general?
If there's any general items, people can just email us.
So we're not having two public comments.
No.
So we've. Okay, so that's a step back from where we were at.
Well, actually, originally we had only one public comment and then we did two. But now we're back to one like we were originally.
Originally when?
Originally, back when Peter Parsons was here.
I've been in town 25 years. We've had two public comments for
No.
25 years in my experience.
Well, that's incorrect, but either way.
Well, I know I've spoken
Yeah.
at him over the last
Yeah.
25 years.
Okay,
So
so what's your point is you want to have two public comments?
yeah, my point is.
I'm trying to ask.
Yes,
trying to-
okay. Well, then
Yeah.
yes, okay, then my point is we should have a public comment at the outset, like we've traditionally had in Lewisboro.
Right,
And one at the end, public comment for new business only. So people
Yeah.
have an opportunity at the outset of the meeting, as historically has been the case in town, that they could comment on whatever they want.
okay. I mean, people have the ability to email us and then we can read that email into.
They can, but I want,
communication.
again, it's just the
Yeah.
same point I made before. I
And I'm
just think it makes
yeah.
sense. It's just, I
So,
mean,
so I'm trying to expedite these meetings so we're not here late and that's part of the reason as well.
well, that
Yeah.
historically takes between 5 and 10 minutes here. And we had a presentation which is very important by the
Right.
comprehensive plan project update, which is about 90 minutes. So I
Okay.
think if that's what we're talking about, I think I would ask that for the next meeting, we restore what we've had.
Okay.
So we have The second one is fine, public comment limited to new business only, it should be narrowed, but at the outset, I would ask that we have one, a public comment as we historically have had in Lewisboro, where people could comment
Okay.
whatever they want, subject to the rules which are in place as far as for decorum and all that kind of stuff. So I'd ask that that be brought back at the next meeting, please.
Okay, thanks for your input, Rich. Next, we have approval of claims. So motion to approve claims.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
I,
Polling of the board. Start with Rich.
Thank you. Thanks for reading that from the Westchester Municipal Officials letter, Tony. I'm glad to see that the Westchester Municipal Officials Association is united and steadfast in its opposition to the governor's housing compact in its present form. As it currently represents what seems to be an undemocratic effort by the governor to dismantle and disregard long-established home rule principles and processes, which ensures that local zoning, planning, and development remains solely under local control. I have email which I saw came across from the Vista Hamlet Stewardship Council. We'll read that briefly. Good
oh,
evening,
good, okay.
Town Board. The Vista Hamlet Stewardship Council would like to thank you for allowing us, Town Board, to use the Vista Town Park for our upcoming egg hunt event, which I think is on the 25th.
March 25th.
March 25th.
Thank you. We're eager for our community to get to know our community organization. The mission of the VHSC is to put forth and implement initiatives for the hamlet of Vista that carry out the beautification and enhance the safety and accessibility of our diverse community. We envision a place where residents of all ages can connect with their neighbors, places of interest, natural surroundings, and businesses in a safe manner. We look forward to having an opportunity to work with the collaborators of the comprehensive plan to relay what residents and businesses in our hamlet would like to see in the future. And hope all of our town committees and board will keep this in mind, work to aid residents and business owners that are our town. Let's encourage residents and business owners of all economic means to be able to flourish in our town. Thanks for all your hard work and efforts in bettering the town. Glad to see in the reports the consent agenda. That the building department revenue is back up, I guess, about comparable 21 above 100,000. That's great. And also I see from the police report that VTL enforcement up about 50% month over month. That's good to see. We have also, and it ties into Katie's presentation. We have our community organizations, as well as things like, I was just thinking about the homeowners associations. I've been a long-term president of mine. That's a real opportunity where to get the word out, people, and just make sure that the participation in the master plan is as wide and broad as possible as we move forward in the process. Thank you.
Mary, you're next.
Couple of quick event announcements. The Lewisboro Library is having a citizen preparedness training program on March 22nd at 7 p.m. It will be a 1-hour program to go over the steps you need to prepare for an emergency. Attendees can enter a raffle for a 3-day emergency supply kit. And it's members of the New York National Guard Service will be there, along with the Department of Homeland Security and local emergency management personnel. And they are holding classes across the state. And this is our opportunity to learn how to become more prepared on March 22nd at 7 p.m. And also on Thursday, No to Prevent is hosting an online event on March 16th when mental health and substance use collide. It's a lecture from 7 to 8:30. You can learn more about the relationship between mental health and substance use, as well as social media's part in influencing behaviors. If you want to learn more about this event, it's listed on the calendar of the lewisborogov.com. So it's online and it's free. So if you're interested in that, please sign up. The egg hunt that Rich just mentioned, the Vista Hamlet Spring Egg Hunt, is March 25th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Vista Town Park. It's in Vista, the best hamlet of all. But please, it's a free event. It's what we're calling a fundraiser, where families can get together and do crafts and have a lot of fun. And one final thing I will mention, in addition to my gratitude for the highway department and the work they're in the process of doing and will be doing in the next couple of days with this weather, and the work that they've done, even though it's been relatively mild, we've had a lot of wind. They have brought some trees down, and I'm grateful for the work they've done to clear them. The Habitat NYCWC has an aging in place program. So if you are an older adult with limited income under $88,000 and or over $88,750, you could qualify for this program that would provide potential services such as grab bars, light switches, lighting, and trip prevention modifications, as well as hearing impaired doorbell notification and other adjustments so you can age in place. And if you want more information, just reach out to me and I can get that information to you.
Thanks, Mayor. Andrew?
I want to let everyone know that Officer Llewellyn of our Lewisboro Police Department and Zane were called upon to help our neighbors in Connecticut. And I just want to read something to you. It's called Operation Trinity Cafe Arrests Made. On March 8th, 2023, the Brookfield and Danbury Police Department executed 18 search warrants and 1 arrest warrant stemming from a month-long investigation into narcotics trafficking. The investigation, identified as Operation Trinity Cafe, began after Brookfield police responded to a non-fatal overdose and became aware that an individual, I'll leave the name out, later identified as, of Danbury, Connecticut, had been distributing narcotics in and around Brookfield. A Brookfield detective learned that investigators with the Danbury Police Department Special Investigations Division were familiar with this person. After a collaborative investigation with the Danbury Police Department Special Investigations Division and the DEA, additional suspects were identified and determined to be working with this individual as part of a localized organization. With the assistance of the DEA, New Milford Police Department, Richfield Police Department, Lewisboro Police Department, and Officer Llewellyn and Officer Zane, they executed search and seizure locations in Danbury. As a result, the execution of the 18 search and seizure warrants and arrests, a total of approximately 2 pounds of crack cocaine, 5 ounces of powder cocaine, 4 pounds of fentanyl, 1.6 pounds of opioid pills, and drug paraphernalia were located and seized. Investigators also seized approximately $20,000 in cash, et cetera, et cetera. So as always, we greatly appreciate the assistance and a collaboration of all agencies involved and greatly value the partnerships that we continue to build.
As you told me, I think, Andrew, that was done without incident.
Yes, without incident. So it was wonderful. So thank you to Officer Llewellyn and Officer Zane. And we really enjoy the collaboration with our neighboring agencies. Also, just want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. Be safe. Okay.
All right, thank you. Dan?
Went to the event at the library. You were there, Tony,
Yeah, it was
also the
fun.
musical event, Pluck and Rail, and I just have to say they do such a great job now. Really upgraded since the days when I was part of the folk music team that was organizing those things. That just really do an amazing job. It was a lot of fun. The bike pedestrian committee is starting to work on this ballot bond proposal that we talked about. So hopefully they're going to bring that to us as a proposal at an upcoming session soon. That's a nice job on updating the tree code. And it's just a reminder that we can do that. We can actually just learn from our, put out our code, but then learn from it and refine things. I think we should not hesitate to do that. And lastly, just reinforce what Katie said about thanking all the outreach teams that are working on the getting the word out on the comprehensive plan. It's an amazing team. So many people jumping in so enthusiastically. So.
I do have one more thing. You all may have noticed that the organization that the town hired to take down the dead ash trees has been in and about, and I can tell you they were in my neighborhood. They shut down Mill River Road for a good part of Friday, removing some of the dead ash trees. So they're coming to your neck of the woods. So be patient, they will be there.
Ash trees beware.
Ash trees beware.
Well, they're already beyond the
Okay.
pale.
Thanks.
It's true.
So, yeah, a couple of things. First, I'd like to answer Carol Sarnak's question about the conservation easement. Carol, we have not done anything with that yet, but we'll keep you posted.
We're going to be working with open space to
Right,
clear it up and give it the respect that it's due.
right. Yeah, I'd just like to share as well. Yeah, I was at the Pluck and Rail event at the library. It was well attended, lots of fun.
Sold out.
Sold out, right? And several of our local merchants were there, Cross River Wines, Horse and Hound. They've donated to the event. Who else? Lily's Deli, Bluebird Ice Cream. And yeah, it was lots of fun. So support your library. It was a great event. So look forward to the next
Aside
one.
From all the things that, from, I guess, Mary's brainchild back in the day,
Yeah.
but I mean, one of the things that's awesome on a weekend, and I wasn't, but it's a great deal. It's usually $35, give or
It's
take.
usually $35, but all the food and drink is
Right.
donated
Yeah.
or by the local shop owners. And
100.
again, shop local, because without our local shop owners and businesses, we wouldn't be anywhere without them.
And because of their generosity, you can have a great cozy evening here in Lewisboro
Professional
with-
musicians.
with food and beverage you may like among the beverage choices. And it's a great evening. For those, especially those who are newer in town, check it out. Look for future opportunities to enjoy that.
And a shout out to Elena Dunn and Liz Gabriel for making it happen.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Okay, announcements next. Yes, thank you. So we had, it was last week ago. Deirdre Casper, our tax receiver, her husband passed away. And very unfortunate.
Tom Casper served on the
He
zoning
served on the
board of
ZBA.
appeals for
Right,
years.
for a
and
long time.
years.
His service was on Thursday,
It
last
was,
Thursday.
visitation was on Thursday.
the visitation and memorial
Packed.
service, and it was well attended. Packed, the line was out the door for quite
I
a while.
was, we were all, I mean, I think
Yeah.
everybody here was pretty much.
Yeah.
together, so.
Yeah. So Deidre's back at work, but I'm sure it's not easy on her.
Our hearts
Um,
ache for
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
family.
Tom and
Yeah.
Deirdre have been pillars of our community for many, many years. They've contributed their time. They've contributed more than their time. Tom coached so many things, swimming and
Yeah.
just
First minute with the swimming pool.
there was he was a character, and you
Great
couldn't
sense of humor.
you couldn't
Yeah.
anything other than love the man. And their strong sense of family and community is something that we all respected and admired. So our hearts go out to Deirdre and the children.
Yeah.
Yes,
Gentlemen.
yes, he was. Okay, so the next town board meeting is Monday, March 27th, 2023 at 7:30 PM here at the Townhouse, 11 Main Street, South Salem. So I motion to go into executive session for a committee interview. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.